It always starts the same way. Another argument that goes nowhere. You try to explain yourself, to reason, to fix what's breaking, but your words just fall flat. And in that moment, something inside you snaps quietly. You realize you're tired, not of them, but of the noise. So you walk away, not with anger, not with drama, just the kind of stillness that feels like surrender, until it doesn't. Because silence, brother, has a strange way of rewriting everything. At first it feels like distance, a pause, a breath, a gap between storms. But stay silent long enough, and you'll see it's not distance at all, it's direction. The longer you stay quiet, the more truth begins to surface. You start to see who only knew how to love you through conflict, and who disappears when peace enters the room. And that's when the paradox hits. Silence doesn't just protect your peace, it exposes theirs. It shows who can exist without control, and who falls apart without your reaction. You don't plan to go silent, but once you do, it starts to work on both sides. You think you're protecting your heart, but silence has a way of teaching you who was really listening all along. Because silence isn't absence, it's revelation. It's the moment you stop explaining and start evolving. Drop a 1 if silence still feels like weakness. Drop a 2 if you've learned it's your greatest weapon. Start this journey now. Like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station, where every lesson brings you closer to calm, strength, and the quiet power that changes everything. Now, let's dive in. 1. It begins quietly, the birth of silence. You don't plan to go silent, brother. It happens slowly, after one more argument that leads nowhere, after one more moment when your words hit a wall and echo back empty. There comes a point when speaking starts to drain more than it heals. You stop explaining, not because you don't care, but because you've finally understood that peace can't exist where your voice is constantly defending itself. At first, silence feels like surrender. It feels like you've lost ground, like you're stepping back in defeat. You tell yourself, I just need space. But what begins as space soon becomes something deeper, a sanctuary where you start to see everything more clearly. You're not retreating, you're recalibrating. The quiet that once felt heavy begins to reveal its weight in gold, because in that stillness, you finally start to hear the only voice that truly matters, your own. What you don't realize at first is that silence begins to work on both sides. You stop speaking to protect your peace, while they stop noticing, thinking your absence means you've given up. They mistake your calm for weakness, your stillness for indifference. They think the storm has passed because the thunder stopped, never realizing that silence is the part of the storm that changes everything. But silence isn't absence, it's exposure. It reveals who can exist without constant validation and who needs chaos to feel alive. The world around you will test that silence. Some will poke it, some will misunderstand it, others will fear it. Because silence takes away their favorite weapon, your reaction. People who once felt powerful in your presence will start to feel powerless in your absence. And that's when the balance begins to shift. In the quiet, your thoughts stop racing to be heard. The noise of confusion starts to fade, and for the first time in a long time, you feel yourself coming back together. You begin to understand that peace isn't the prize you chase, it's the posture you choose. You start noticing the difference between keeping quiet out of fear and staying silent out of strength. One hides, the other builds. Each day that passes, the tension that used to demand a reaction dissolves a little more. You stop waking up to defend your side of the story. You stop explaining what they were never willing to understand. And somewhere in that stillness, something powerful begins to grow. Discipline, the kind that doesn't need an audience, the kind that isn't shaken by misunderstanding. You realize you're not trying to win the argument anymore. You're trying to win yourself back, because every time you choose silence over chaos, you reclaim a piece of yourself that noise once owned. That's the quiet revolution happening inside you. It's subtle but unstoppable. Silence teaches you that control isn't about changing others. It's about mastering your response. It's knowing when to speak and when to let time do the talking. It's standing firm without shouting, walking away without resentment, and healing without applause. And as the days stretch on, something inside you shifts. You no longer crave to be understood. You start craving peace. You stop trying to be heard in places where listening never existed. You realize that sometimes silence isn't the lack of power, it's the beginning of it. Write this down. Peace isn't passive, it's discipline. Silence is where that discipline begins. Because the truth is, silence doesn't mean you're done caring. It means you've started caring about the right things, your clarity, your energy, your balance. And brother, when a man learns to master his silence, the world starts to listen to everything he doesn't say. And that's where the real story begins. 2. The illusion of freedom. When they think they're free. When you pull away, they breathe easier. It feels lighter, easier to move without the weight of your presence. No more conversations that hold them accountable. No more mirrors reflecting their contradictions. They call it freedom, but it's not. It's only relief wearing the mask of peace. And relief is temporary. It fades as soon as the noise quiets and the distractions lose their flavor. At first, they celebrate. They go out more, surround themselves with new faces, and feed on the thrill of being unattached. Every night out feels like a victory, every laugh like proof that they made the right choice. The ego starts to narrate, "I did what I had to do, I'm fine now," but that story isn't truth. It's anesthesia. It numbs, it distracts, it buys time. Because silence, brother, is patient. It doesn't chase. It waits. It waits for the moment when the music fades, when the spotlight turns cold, and all that's left is the sound of their own thoughts again. That's when the illusion begins to crack. The nights don't feel as bright anymore. The faces around them start to blur together. The excitement feels forced, and the freedom starts to taste like emptiness. They open their phone, scroll through old pictures, not for nostalgia, but for reassurance. They're not missing you. They're checking to see if the story still holds. They're looking for proof that walking away was strength, not fear. But the truth always finds its way through silence. And silence, unlike words, doesn't defend itself. It reveals. It reveals the gap between relief and peace, between distraction and healing. Because real peace doesn't come from running away from emotion. It comes from mastering it. They haven't learned that yet. They've only learned how to escape. But you can only run for so long before the quiet catches up. Your absence begins to grow heavier than your presence ever did. They start to notice the things they once ignored, the calm in your tone, the steadiness in your energy, the way you made chaos feel manageable. At first, they thought they wanted space, but now that space has turned into distance. It's not liberation, it's gravity. Because what they called freedom was really just a break from reflection, and reflection always returns. You can escape a person, but not the mirror they leave behind. That mirror is what your silence becomes. It follows them in the stillness, whispering truths they tried to drown out. Every distraction eventually fades, but the awareness that comes from silence only grows louder. And this is where your calm begins to work on their conscience. Your lack of reaction unsettles them more than anger ever could, because silence has no edge, no weakness to exploit. It doesn't plead, it doesn't explain, it simply is. And that stillness holds a kind of power they can't imitate. The illusion of freedom collapses not with noise but with time. Time exposes what was real and what was performance. And sooner or later, they'll realize it wasn't your attention that kept them trapped. It was their need to feel in control of it. So let them call it freedom. Let them post, laugh, and pretend they've moved on. Because the deeper truth is this: they're not escaping you. They're running from themselves. And eventually, when the noise dies down, they'll see it clearly. Your silence is the gravity that pulls their truth back into view. It's the reflection they can't turn away from. And when that moment comes, brother, you'll understand something powerful. Silence doesn't just protect you. It exposes what was never meant to stay. That's when the mirror begins to turn, and the story starts to change. 3. The mirror appears. When silence starts reflecting. Time has a strange way of turning silence into a mirror. At first it feels like nothing is happening. No words, no reaction, no closure. But slowly, silence begins to do what noise never could. It starts to reflect. The longer it lasts, the more it reveals. It shows not just who you are, but who they've become without your presence to validate them. They once believed they could define your worth through reaction: push, pull, test, repeat. Every emotional trigger they set was a way to measure their control over you. As long as you argued, explained, or defended yourself, they felt powerful. But now there's nothing to feed on. No energy, no response. The familiar rhythm of conflict has stopped, and in its place stands a quiet they can't escape. At first, they tell themselves you're being stubborn, that you'll eventually cave, that silence is just your latest strategy. But as time stretches, that illusion collapses. The calm you've chosen doesn't feel like defeat. It feels like distance. And that distance feels permanent. They start wondering why this silence feels heavier than anger, more final than words. They don't understand yet, but you do. Because, brother, this is where silence becomes your teacher. It teaches you that peace doesn't come from being understood. It comes from understanding yourself. You start to see that you no longer need to chase clarity from those who thrive in confusion. You no longer crave explanations from people who only listen to respond. You've realized that some connections can only be healed by disconnection. Every day you stay silent, the noise within them gets louder. The same silence that brings you peace starts to bring them discomfort. They begin to fill the quiet with thoughts they used to silence with control. Every unanswered message reminds them of the truth they've avoided. Control built on attention was never control at all. Your silence is rewriting the narrative they once dictated. It strips away the illusion that they were the one calling the shots. Now, they're left alone with the echo of their own behavior. That's what silence does. It doesn't destroy, it reveals. And the reflection isn't always kind. Meanwhile, something inside you shifts too. The same quiet that unsettles them starts to steady you. You begin to understand what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. You start to see that the battle was never between you and them. It was between your need for validation and your desire for peace. And the moment you chose stillness over struggle, you won a war they don't even know existed. The power was never in the noise. It was in how long you could stay still while the noise tried to move you. Every time you resist the urge to explain, every time you choose peace over reaction, you're sharpening the blade of your discipline. You're no longer performing for approval. You're mastering the art of restraint, and that's something few people ever learn. They begin to feel it too, the weight of your calm. They may not admit it out loud, but your silence forces them to see what words always concealed. They start to recognize the difference between someone who disappears to punish and someone who withdraws to heal. That's when the mirror becomes clear. The silence that once felt like distance now feels like consequence. You'll notice it too. The messages sent late at night, the posts designed to get your attention, the subtle attempts to provoke a reaction. But by now, you've learned. You see through the noise. You know that peace isn't weakness, it's control. You've stopped looking outward for closure because you've found it within yourself. Write this down. Silence doesn't punish, it purifies. It filters truth from illusion until only what's real remains. And what's real, brother, always survives the quiet. Because in the end, silence isn't what ends things. It's what reveals what was already ending. It's the mirror that shows both sides of the story without bias, without noise, without ego. And when you learn to look into that mirror without fear, you realize something powerful. You were never losing them. You were finding you. And that's the kind of reflection that changes everything. 4. The power reversal. When control collapses. There was a time when they dictated the rhythm, a message, a fight, an apology, a temporary calm. It was choreography, emotional predictability disguised as love. You'd argue, they'd withdraw, you'd explain, and the cycle would repeat. They knew your triggers. They knew exactly what words would pull you back in, and every time you responded, you confirmed their control. But now the rhythm has stopped. You've broken the pattern. No more calls, no more long explanations trying to prove your heart. Just silence. And that silence unnerves them. Because your stillness is no longer predictable, and unpredictability terrifies the ego. They can't read you anymore. They can't use emotion as a map. Where there was once chaos, there's now composure, and that composure feels like a wall they can't climb. This is the moment Seneca would call the return of sovereignty. You haven't gained new power, you've simply stopped giving it away. For years they fed on reaction, the sighs, the texts, the pleas, the debates. Now there's nothing left to feed on, and without your emotional energy, their sense of control begins to unravel. They used to dominate the conversation. Now they're forced to sit in the silence they created. You'll see the tests begin again. A vague post meant for you to notice. A "how have you been?" message sent not from care, but curiosity. They're not trying to rebuild, they're trying to measure. They want to know if the old version of you still exists, the one who would rush to respond, to soothe, to fix. But this time you don't take the bait. Your response is calm. Or maybe there is no response at all. Because silence isn't withdrawal, it's declaration. It says, "I no longer dance to chaos." You're not avoiding conflict, you're refusing to participate in the performance. You've learned that not every invitation deserves attendance. Not every emotion deserves expression. That is restraint, and restraint is the purest form of power. In this phase, you begin to see how fragile their control really was. It was never about love or connection. It was about reaction. As long as you reacted, they mattered. As long as you explained, they had leverage. But when your calm replaced your reaction, the foundation of their power collapsed. Now they face something they can't manipulate, your composure, and nothing terrifies a controlling person more than peace they can't disturb. Because peace means they've lost the script. There's no argument to win, no explanation to twist. Just quiet. And in that quiet, their reflection starts to appear. Seneca once wrote, "He who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior." That's what you're doing now. You're conquering the parts of you that once needed to be seen, to be right, to be chosen. You're realizing that control isn't domination. It's detachment from what once controlled you. True strength is measured not by how loudly you respond, but by how calmly you refuse to be moved. And as you stand in that stillness, something powerful happens. The roles reverse. The one who once controlled the rhythm now chases the echo of a song that no longer plays. They're trapped in the silence they thought they wanted, and you're finally free within it. Your silence becomes gravity. It pulls truth into focus and exposes the imbalance that was always there. And soon, they'll realize what you already know. You were never the one under control. You were the anchor holding everything together. Write this down. Restraint isn't weakness, it's wisdom. When you stop performing for validation, you reclaim your sovereignty. And once you own your peace, no one can use your reaction to control you again. That's the beauty of this reversal. What once bound you now breaks in your stillness. Because silence doesn't just end manipulation, it ends the illusion that you ever needed to prove your worth to someone who couldn't recognize it. 5. The ego breaks when the noise turns to panic. It always happens quietly at first. The same voice that once spoke with certainty starts to sound unsure. The same person who said they were done begins to check if you've moved on, if you've changed, if someone else has taken the place they once occupied. It's not love that pulls them back, it's ego starving, because ego can't stand the idea of being forgotten. They start scrolling through your feed, not out of affection, but for reassurance. They're not looking for you. They're looking for proof that they still exist in your world. They want to see signs that your life hasn't shifted without them, that your silence is temporary. But silence, brother, is merciless to ego. It gives nothing. It offers no clues, no comfort, no validation. And every time they find nothing, no posts, no mentions, no breadcrumbs, it begins to chip away at their certainty. Their confidence starts to sound like a lie, even in their own head. What once felt like freedom now feels like absence. What once looked like strength now feels like loss. The line between "I'm fine" and "I messed up" starts to blur, and the noise in their mind gets louder with every passing day you stay silent, because ego thrives on attention, and without it, it begins to starve. Here's the paradox. The calmer you remain, the louder their panic grows. Your peace becomes a mirror they can't look away from. Your silence reflects every insecurity they've tried to bury, and the realization that they can't affect you anymore, it's devastating to a fragile ego. It's not rejection they feel, it's irrelevance. And to the ego, that's the most painful form of loss. They might tell themselves they don't care, that you're just being dramatic, that they've moved on, but their actions will betray them. The subtle check-ins, the half-hearted messages, the cryptic posts meant for you, they're all small attempts to reclaim control. Because when you stopped reacting, you didn't just take back your peace, you took away their power. And this is where you begin to understand what Epictetus meant when he said, "He who angers you conquers you." If someone can trigger your reaction, they control your energy. But when you learn to stay calm in the face of provocation, you reclaim that control. Your silence becomes the proof of your mastery. It's not resistance, it's evolution. You're no longer fighting to be seen, you're too grounded to be shaken. Ego doesn't know how to survive in that kind of atmosphere. It begins to unravel, not because you punished it, but because you stopped feeding it. Every moment you don't respond is a lesson in restraint, a reminder that peace is stronger than performance. And as they struggle with their fading importance, you'll notice something profound. What used to drain you now empowers you. The tables have turned, not through manipulation, but through stillness. They chased power through control, but you found power in composure. They sought validation through noise, but you discovered clarity in quiet. And in that balance, you become unshakable. Write this down. Ego feeds on reaction. Starve it, and you'll see who's really strong. Because the moment you stop explaining yourself, The moment you stop trying to prove your worth to those who doubted it, you step into a kind of strength no one can imitate. Let them watch in silence. Let them wonder. Their noise will fade long before your calm does. And when the ego breaks, the truth surfaces. The one who can stay silent in chaos will always be the one in control. 6. The transformation when silence becomes identity. While they wrestle with confusion and doubt, something powerful begins to take shape inside you. What started as a defense mechanism, a way to protect yourself from noise and chaos, slowly transforms into presence. The same silence that once felt like distance now feels like power. What once felt empty now feels clean, like a space cleared for something greater to grow. You begin to realize that peace isn't something you wait for. It's something you build moment by moment through your restraint. You start to breathe differently. The weight that used to sit on your chest begins to lift. Every breath feels more deliberate, more grounded, more yours. You stop explaining your worth to people who were never listening, because now your energy does the talking. There's a quiet confidence in you that words can't reach. You no longer chase understanding, you embody it. And that shift, brother, is everything. You begin to understand that not everyone deserves access to your emotions. Peace is not a reward to hand out. It's a privilege to protect. You stop giving unlimited access to people who never respected the cost of your energy. That's when the discipline of Stoicism begins to take root. You learn that calm isn't the same as indifference. It's control over impulse. You're no longer a man reacting to every wave that hits. You've become the tide itself, steady and unshakable. This is the stage Marcus Aurelius spoke of when he wrote, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say or do." You finally understand that serenity isn't found in convincing others. It's found in mastering yourself. You no longer measure peace by how others treat you. You measure it by how little they can disturb you. The less you react, the clearer you see. The clearer you see, the freer you become. Every silence you hold now carries weight. It's not withdrawal, it's wisdom. You see how every argument avoided, every emotion restrained, is a quiet act of strength. You begin to understand that maturity isn't about saying more, it's about needing less. You stop trying to be seen and start seeing everything. And that awareness, that ability to observe without being pulled, is what Stoicism has been preparing you for all along. You realize now that silence doesn't just protect your peace, it defines it. It no longer feels like a wall between you and the world. It's the foundation beneath your feet. People can feel it when you walk into a room. The steadiness, the centeredness, the quiet authority. You don't demand respect anymore. Your stillness commands it. You begin to recognize that true strength doesn't roar, it hums quietly beneath the surface. It's not about proving a point or defending your worth. It's about knowing that both are already intact. The same calm that once felt foreign now feels like home. You see how silence has reshaped you, refined you, and rebuilt you into a man who doesn't need to announce his evolution. He lives it. Write this down. Stillness isn't the absence of movement. It's the presence of mastery. Because in the end, it's not about how loudly you speak, but how deeply your silence resonates. When you stop chasing noise and start walking in your own rhythm, you realize something profound. Peace was never out there waiting for you to find it. It was waiting inside you for you to become quiet enough to hear it. And that's when you know you're no longer the man who needed silence to heal. You're the man whose silence heals everything around him. 7. The quiet revolution, when you become the echo. There comes a day when the silence no longer feels like waiting, it feels like peace. The tension that once lived in your chest dissolves, and the urge to check your phone, to scroll for answers, to rehearse what you'd say if they came back, it's all gone. You wake up one morning and realize that you don't need closure anymore because you've already given it to yourself. What once felt like absence now feels like arrival. You've stepped into the rarest kind of strength there is, emotional sovereignty. And somewhere out there, they feel it. Not through your words, but through the absence of them. There's a strange gravity in the quiet you've created. They can sense it. The way your energy has shifted, the way your silence no longer asks for anything, because true power doesn't announce itself. It radiates. It's felt in the spaces you no longer fill, in the emotions you no longer give away. Maybe they reach out again, gently, carefully. Hey, just thought of you. The message looks harmless, but you can hear what's beneath it, the ego whispering, "Do I still matter?" You don't respond from pride, you move from clarity. You've learned that not every invitation deserves attendance, not every curiosity deserves closure. Because you understand now, replying would cost the peace it took months to build. You no longer crave reaction or recognition, you crave nothing, and that nothing, that calm indifference, is the ultimate form of power. This is the quiet revolution, the shift from needing to be chosen to choosing yourself. The moment you stop seeking validation because peace has replaced performance. You've stopped trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer chase closure because you've become it. The world still shouts, still demands that you explain, prove and perform, but you no longer need to join the noise. You've learned that silence speaks louder when it comes from strength, not from pain. Marcus Aurelius once said that the closer a man is to peace, the harder he is to control. You've become that man. The same calm that once made others uncomfortable now shields you from their chaos. The same silence they thought meant surrender has become your crown. You've realized that peace isn't a reaction to what happens outside of you. It's the decision to stay unmoved by it. And that's when the transformation completes itself. You look back at everything you survived, the noise, the confusion, the endless push and pull, and it all makes sense. You see how every unanswered message, every quiet night, every moment of restraint was preparing you for this, the stillness of knowing who you are. You didn't lose yourself in the quiet. You found yourself there. Your silence has done what anger never could. It transformed you. It rewired your spirit. It took your pain and shaped it into discipline. It took your longing and turned it into presence. You no longer need to prove your worth because your stillness already does. You no longer fight for connection because what's meant for you will meet you in peace, not in noise. Write this down. Silence doesn't end the story. It reveals who was real within it. Because in the end, the ones who were meant to understand your quiet will never fear it. And the ones who were only drawn to your noise were never meant to stay. You've become the echo now, the calm after the storm, the voice that lingers long after the shouting ends. You don't have to be loud to be remembered. The world feels your presence not because you speak, but because you've mastered the rarest language there is, silence. And when a man reaches that level of peace, brother, he doesn't chase the world anymore. The world starts chasing the calm he carries. This is what really happens when you stay silent too long. At first, it feels like distance, like something has been taken from you. But with time, that distance becomes direction. The silence that once felt like loss turns into clarity. It strips away illusion until only strength remains. And when that strength finally settles in your bones, you stop craving to be understood, because you've mastered the only understanding that truly matters, yourself. Brother, your calm is your comeback. Your silence is your statement. And your peace is your power. If this message found you at the right time, let it sink in. Because silence isn't just something you practice, it's something you become. You've seen the full journey now, At first, silence protects you. Then it exposes them. And in the end, it transforms you. That's the Stoic path, from reaction to restraint to rebirth. You didn't disappear to prove a point. You disappeared to reclaim your peace. And now that peace speaks louder than any explanation ever could. So let me ask you, when you finally stopped chasing noise, what did silence reveal about you? Share that truth below. Someone out there needs to hear it. Drop this in the comments. Silence built me. Like this video if you're walking that path right now, and subscribe to Stoic Station for daily lessons in discipline, detachment, and calm power. And remember this before you go. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You don't need to prove your worth to be seen. Just live in a way that makes your silence speak for you. Your calm is your message. Your stillness is your legacy.